In this second reading for Geographical Ideas, we turn to the humanistic tradition, a key paradigm in the hermeneutic field of human geography, a field that seeks to look in how the world is interpreted by different social groups, different cultural groups, different meanings that people give to the world. And perhaps those meanings and those interpretations, those value systems, those belief systems are as important, if you like, as what the real world is actually like. This brings a different sense into human geography, bringing the human back in, if you like, and not looking just at an ontologically true, real world, but actually the perceptions, the value systems, the interpretations that people have of that world. Epistemologically looking at that knowledge and that value as an authentic, valid, legitimate source of inspiration and understanding of the world, rather than scientifically seeking to map the real ontologically true conditions of the world out there. So bringing the human back into human geography through these humanistic paradigms is a reaction to a scientific, detached, rational geography that almost emaciated the human geography tradition by simply looking at equations, through looking at basing it on the quantitative revolution, allying human geography with neoclassical economics, and taking out these value systems, these interpretations of the world around them, and seeking an objective, detached, scientific view of the world. As a consequence, therefore, you see that these two traditions, the quantitative revolution, spatial science and regional science, on one hand, and the humanistic and hermeneutic paradigms on the other, are vying for the very soul of human geography, if you like, thinking what knowledges and what understandings of the world are most important. And from the perspective that we have in the early 21st century, looking back on these debates in the 1950s, 1960s and 1970s, should we be thinking about which side are we on in relation to one school of geography or another school of geography, or trying to see how they interrelate to one another, and perhaps how these two apparently diverse and opposite sets of geographical paradigms have some similarity and perhaps could be unified together. So in relation to this humanistic paradigm, we're looking at Tuan, his space and place, humanistic perspective, again in human geography, an essential anthology. And as we've said in this module, human geography can be thought of as a family tree, and in essence we can see this, the introduction of Tuan's ideas in the 1970s, let's say, as very much a kind of, he might be seen as one sort of key father figure of humanistic geography, but also as the generations went on, his followers, people who like this humanistic version, have gone on to reinvent the cultural geography tradition more broadly, and we'll see that more in the spring semester. But people like Tim Creswell, for example, who we'll turn to in a moment, but also more specifically in the culture, space and place course, he was Tuan's PhD student, and we can see his ideas running with some of Tuan's and reinvigorating cultural geography in the decades that follow. So Tuan was a Chinese-American geographer working in the United States, and in this paper he outlines his view of what geography should be. So when you're outlining this, I want you to think about some of the meanings of place that Tuan talks about. And in that meaning of place, we're outlining a little bit about the humanistic tradition more broadly. And in that he outlines two sets of things that we need to bear in mind when we're thinking about place. The first thing I want you to look for in the paper is the connection between sociology and geography. Instead of marrying human geography with neoclassical economics, as the spatial sciences have done, humanist geographers are taking their insights from anthropology and sociology, and this kind of two ways in which we can think about place is a key, informs us crucially into that marrying of sociology and geography. So look out for that in what Tuan talks about his meaning of place. And then secondly, think about the two aspects of, or the variety of meanings of place that Tuan goes on to consider. How does he think about the notion of personality? How does he think about notions of awe and affection in setting out how we understand a humanized version of place? And once we've done that, we can perhaps think about whether that humanised version of place is applicable within modern society through increasing globalisation and perhaps mobility of population, mobility of yourself perhaps? Do you think that modern society has lost a humanistic sense of place, as Tuan would outline it? Then I want you to think about another set of questions about relation to places that you know well, perhaps our sense of home. Perhaps some of you have done gap years, perhaps you've travelled in your summer breaks and your summer vacations. How does this travel, how does our mobility connect to our senses of belonging, our sense of insiderness or indeed outsiderness about our home place? How have our perceptions of home changed by coming away to university? So do you agree with Tuan when he suggests travel enhances a sense of home and a sense of belonging, or perhaps it subverts or undermines our sense of home? And then finally, also perhaps think about what he terms fields of care and public symbols. What does he mean by these two phrases? And can you think of examples which are in everyday experience, or indeed landmark places that are fields of care or public symbols? And this notion of fields of care and public symbols really fits into perhaps the planning half of your course a bit more than geography. Thinking, how can we plan for places to make them fields of care? How can we plan for public symbols if we think they're important? How can places around us embody particular ideals and ideas about society and make them part and parcel of the geographical landscape amongst us? Is that something that planners could do, and would that make for a better environment and give ourselves a better sense of place? Good luck.